Hello chess friends, I hope you're all doing well. Today, I'm excited to share a remarkable chess game I played recently. In this game, I used the Stockfish gambit during a tournament against Seer, one of the top chess engines globally. In this video, I'll show you some clever opening moves and discuss the middle game strategies I used. So let's get started without wasting any time. I kicked things off with knight f3, so-called ratty opening. Black here usually plays d4, which is also a standard way of developing move. Then you can follow up with the systematically queen's gambit after c4, play e3 to bring out your bishop. All are the usual stuff. And from the black's perspective, he can follow bishop f5, knight c6 e3 and bishop g4, it's kinda like Nimzo-Indian, or, even black sometimes play the devious maneuver move c5. But in our actual game, Seer copied me because he is a copycat version of Stockfish 69, we have c4, taking control of the center, g6 by him. He is going to play the modern defense, where I showed you many chess traps and strategies in a previous video, and in this video, we are driving into an unique and classical variation of King's Indian defense. e4, taking control over the d5 square, so the black can't push forward his pawn. This d6 and g6 pawn structure supports the knight to build an impending of playing c5 or e5 to govern the center squares. We have d4 castle and h3. Remember this h3 move idea, preventing the knight to coming in g4, while making queen-bishop battery. He can exchange the dark square bishop, which is necessary to launch an attack in Kingside after you break the h-file by pushing your h-pawn. This is our strategy in the modern defense. Black responded with e5. In some variations, when the pawn structure is symmetrically shut down, the bishop is paralyzed behind the structure. You can even push your pawn on d5. You may tempting to play knight h5 followed by f4, which is a good way to develop the knight. Some of you may observe that, by pushing my d-pawn, it creates an outpost on c5 and d4. Now I can push forward my knight to get the c5 outpost. Indeed, this is possible. Moreover, you can attack on my pawn structure by pushing your c-pawn. But that is absolutely okay for me. There is no tactical motifs. In this position, after I play bishop e3, you can play knight h5 followed by knight f4, or even, you can play the sneaky little move, knight takes e4, sacrificing the knight in the opening. Your opponent might capture the knight, but after f5 knight c3 followed by f4 bishop d2 and the potent move e4. Attacking at your knight. Now what should you play? Some of you may think of capturing the pawn, some may think of escaping the knight. We will look both of these options. If you capture it with your knight, rook e8 will pin your knight in front of the king, bishop d3, and your next move is to play castle in order to safeguard your king, but all of a sudden, bishop f5 will compel your knight, where you have to play queen c2 forcefully. But the position gets more improper after black plays knight c5, now you have to pay what you eat in the restaurant. Couple of moves ago, we have looked at knight takes e4 variation, and now some may think of playing knight h2, but here comes the audacious move pawn to e3. Look at this position, the king is located in the center of the board, the rook and the bishop are firing in the position like a lightning storm wrecks a ship in an ocean. After you capture on e3, the dark square gets vividly opened where the queen can swim in the h4 square, prompting the king to go at e2, take, and here comes rook e8. Using the fragile e-file, you may think of playing knight f3 to kick out the queen, but he can valiantly sacrifice his rook on e3, which is a brilliant also, take and bishop check, king moves away knight b4, the king can't go to these red squares, so after king e2 queen e7, the king has only one square to go. Now after queen e3 followed by bishop f4, it will be a checkmate in 2 moves. Let it put like a puzzle. Solve this position. How can black checkmate white in just 2 moves? Write down your answer in the comment box, and let me tell you a quote about life. Keep going, even when you feel like you can take another step. So back to our current position, we have seen the variation behind knight takes e4. Another possible move is that you can play knight h5, now g3 has come to impede the knight entry, but you have the stylish move to dominate the center with f4. This f4 and knight h5 move can be played in such a closed variations, which is focused to open up the file for the rook, but in our actual game, he neither played knight h5 or knight takes e4, he played b6. This is a rubbish move actually. First of all, it creates a weakness that, if the pawn was in b7 then you have the potential chances of playing c6, but the pawn cannot move background. What is this nonsense? You are never going to play bishop b7. And knight c5 a5 wouldn't fabricate a strong attack for you, therefore I played g4, pushing forward my pawn in the king's sight where bishop e2 can support it by disclosing the knight. Now nudge your h-pawn sincerely to break open the h-file. Okay, black responded with bishop d7, his idea is to break open the c-file with c6. Knight c5 will create pressure in the center and rook c8 may come near future. Alright, knight d2 by me, my idea is very sharp and clear, bishop e2 is the strategy to accomplish an attack in the h-file. He tried to create some counterplay with knight c5, but don't worry, this stupid knight can't even damage a single hair of mine. He thought that I would capture the knight and lose the influence to attack in the favorable square. Let me remind your limit, fool, b4, now the knight has to square to go, he has to retreat on b7, and look at these pieces, they are more likely to a statue, unable to free from their sufferings and they can't move their pieces, frequently or place them at valuable squares, which is why after a3 he choose to play a5, attacking to the b4, but I doesn't have any care for it. Yes, you can take my pawn and be happy, but Seer actually decided to play king h8, to be honest it's a waiting move. He wants me to dissipate my bishop on e2, but I placed my bishop on d3 instead of e2. You may wonder why. Okay, let me share my thoughts to you. First of all, it protects the center pawn, second of all, it mobilizes the bishop diagonal from d3 to h7, and third, it can cover my queen from the a4 square where the bishop can potentially associate in an attack. So that is my plan behind bishop e3, and my strategy remains same, play f3, straightforwardly push the pawn and eat prasad. But after take queen e7, instead of following the pawn pushing method, I choose a different approach by boncloud my king on e2, it serves a middle game strategy that, this move connects the rook divinely, f3 is coming by the support from the king itself, but Seer seems more tactical after he plays rook a3, yes, he wants to double up his rooks, attacking to the knight, pressuring to the a-file. So what should you play now? Think a little bit. I played an amazing move knight b5, this knight b5 move attacks to the rook and creates a vulnerability on c7, some of you may think of capturing the knight which seems natural, but that will lead into a catastrophic situation for you. For instance, if rook g8 happen, queen c2 will attack on your burden pawn, you may say that rook c8 can protect the pawn. No idiot, face my knight's kick on c4, you have to save your rook first and after you move away your rook, here comes the unexpected brilliant move knight takes b6, forking the rooks in the Sunday night dinner, after you capture it, I can even exchange my queen with your two moron rooks. Now you have to block the check with your bishop, but look at your pieces, these are more likely to liabilities, unable to free from their mistress. Look, my pawn structure is completely dominating the position, rook h goes to c1, threatening to play rook c7 which can potentially win the knight. Now, you may try knight e8 to insulate rook c7 which also appears an only option for black, but here comes rook a1, now rook a7 is coming to pin the knight to the queen. His elder brother can't help him and the knight can't escape from his sinful deeds, which he did in his past life. Even if you try knight d8, rook to a8 will create a massive pressure against this whole astrocatic family, you may lose all pieces and the game soon but don't lose hope. Let me tell you a quote about success and failure. Coach me and I will learn, challenge me and I will grow, believe in me and I will win. So going back to the position, he didn't capture the knight because he knows the vulnerability behind bishop takes knight, he played rook a2 and if you go for the free chocolate on c7 bishop a4 will sustain this diagonal, therefore he safeguards the square where the queen can arrive and make queen bishop battery along this diagonal after deflecting the pawn if possibly. The rook will get the open file if he dares to capture the knight as I already elucidated already, therefore after queen g1 take. The c2 square is protected where the g1 queen could potentially come to pressure against this c7 soldier. After rook a8 queen d1, he wants to play rook b2, attacking this, and rook a8 to a3 to confront of these bishops. 50% of his pieces are demobilized, unable to move persistently and resist some source of attacks. He tried to re-rotate his knight, and I tried to reposition my king in a better square. Now in this position after I play king g2, you can take my pawn, but the problem is that you will face instability in this file along with your pawn. You may try rook c8, but my bishop can potentially sacrifice himself on b6 where your rook will face health problems due to this open c file if you ever dare to capture the bishop with your pawn. Therefore knight c4 will be a great asset for me to annihilate your structure and pawns. Alright, so after a couple of moves later, white's position is much better and ameliorated. For instance, if you dare to play any normal kind of move, let's say king g8. We can sacrifice our bishop on b6. You may ascertain the idea behind bishop takes pawn, knight takes b6 forks the pieces from a critical situation, and after I eliminate your rook on a8, not only I have the pass pawn, also I am the administrator of this c-file, and on the other hand, your pieces are contain lack of development, lack of education and lack of self-confidence. This position is a favorable setting for me where I can even double up my rooks if needed. So in this position we have queen e7 followed by queen d1 rook a4, and queen to f3, my idea is to play bishop g5 to coercion the knight to move. But Seer here played a big and very big, committing move h6, every time you push your pawn, you make a commitment, make sure that your commitment and pawn pushing will not take you from the safe zone to the danger zone. But in this case he made a big blunder after he pushes his pawn. In this position, the best move is very hard find, I believe, even Magnus Carlsen can't find the best move, and behind its strategy as black, the best move for black, you wouldn't believe, is to play knight on g8. What? How and why? What is the difference between knight g8 and knight e8? Both are appears same. Even though your girlfriend looks the same as she did 6 months or 2 years ago, she has completely changed herself at her psychological level. Knight g8 contains some strategy, it protects the h6 square from any source of attacks within the bishop. Second of all, it prompts to push f6 whenever you try to accomplish your attack with h4 and g5. Now let's say, you play g5, taking control of these vulnerable squares, here comes f6, and h4, with the inspiration to play queen h3 to launch an attack along with the rook in this h-file. Now black can try knight f7, and the game could play like this where black would face many difficulties but he can minimize my attacking chances. However, in our actual game, he didn't play knight g8, he chooses to play h6, which is a completely different approach. This h6 move provides me the prospect of playing h4 g5 to break open your structure. Alright, in a sudden move he played knight h7 with the idea of playing queen h4, to stop the advancement of the pawns. This is a very good strategy to execute. I moved back my bishop, and now if you dare to play queen h4 to stop the pawn advancement because Stockfish said you to do that. Hey fool, now white can play knight b3, locking the rook in the Mexican jail, unable to escape from the prison, the rook will be gone. So in this position, first he escaped the rook away and now I played h4, so the queen can't no longer to involve in h4. After a couple of knight dances, I finally gained the privilege to play g5. Now if black dares to capture the pawn, you should not recapture it immediately, you have the more powerful and tactical move h5, because the black's own pawn locks down the queen's diagonal, the knight can't jump into the g-file. Furthermore, I am focusing to open up the h-file for my rook. The queen is coming into there. Some of you may think of playing queen f6, requesting to exchange the queens, but I will reject your proposition as your crush rejects your proposal in public with queen h3. Now your king has to run, the knight comes into the action, the king and queen need to run from the furnace of bonfire, the king is planned to settle down in the d7 square, but every story has a happy ending. After I capture the pawn and then the soldier on g5, your knight is stuck in front of your queen. The king may try to escape from his problems, but here comes the rook on c3, your knight is under fired by the 3 pieces, you are going to lose the knight and the game very soon. Going back to the position, I showed you the demonstration behind h takes g5, now, let's say you consider of playing h5 which was actually played in the game. His kingside pawn structure are all located in the light squares, therefore I will integrate my bishop on e2 to break the pawn chain. You cannot break the chain right now because your queen is standing there. First move back the queen all the way back to place the bishop on e2, together they can make a big rebellion. Therefore black played queen e8, now bishop e2, combining the energy of the queen and bishop to onslaught the structure, so he played rook a2. And now if you dare to sacrifice your bishop on h5, because Stockfish said you to do that, but the problem is that, now this bishop takes pawn can't bring any advantage for you. After you capture the pawn with your queen, remember this queen e8 move which he played 2 moves, now he can capture on b5 and after you associate your knight in kingside he can play queen e2 right away, making rook queen battery to nourish the attack on f2, and at the same time, he is offering an exchange of queens. So back to the key position where he played queen e8, this queen e8 move is very tricky, it not only promises to capture the pawn, but also anticipates to come in e2 square alongside with the rook to launch an attack in this second rank. So in this position, before capturing on h5, knowing that queen takes b5 is imminent to collaborate an attack with the rook in this rank, I decided to play rook d1 first, in order to protect the e2 square from the queen involvement, and now I am threatening to capture the pawn and indulge my queen on h5. Now you can take my pawn on b5 but you can't emerge your queen on e2 because my rook is protecting there. These are the so-called strategy of Stockfish level, rook a7 and we have the most cherished and brilliant move which we waited for the 15 minutes of time, bishop takes h5, if you don't capture my bishop then I will retreat it and push my pawn forward. So Seer doesn't have much alternative moves, which is why we exchanged in h5, here comes the queen on b5, but unfortunately, you can't play queen e2, fabricating a queen-rook battery to attack the king and queen at the same time. This is the reason why rook e1 was necessary before you would sacrifice your light-squared bishop. Here comes the knight on f5, white contains a strong and authoritative position in the kingside, for instance, if you play rook a8, which seems very innocent and natural, here comes the defect in your position after I capture your bishop on g7, takes and g6 check, you have to capture the pawn, and here comes the astonishing move queen h6 check, the king doesn't carry much choices. He have to go on h8 in order to shield his knight, here comes the bishop on g5, queen back to d7 to protect his homeland, bishop f6 check king runs, rook to g3, attacking to the g6 pawn, and this position is completely dead lost for you. You may argue that knight f8 can protect the pawn on g6. What? What did you said? Your knight protects the pawn, then let me sacrifice my rook, look at this brilliant sacrifice, queen takes check and after some queen and king dances. I will play queen h6 queen to h8, queen g7 and queen g8, look, this is checkmate, the king got checkmated, standing in his own throne on e8. This is the scenario behind rook a8 or any other natural looking move that your 2 GB RAM brain can produce. And let me tell you a quote about life in sudden. Do not try to control what you cannot control, the only thing that you can control is yourself. So in this position, black decided to play queen e8, protecting the pawn and her motherland. Here comes the rook on f3 to x-raying the pawn from f3 square, and in a sudden move I played queen h4, in order to build a master strategy, followed by rook h1, h5 and g6, alright. He tried to do some counterplay with c6, organizing the knight to a better square, something like in his desirable square d5, but it's too late for him, lol, ha 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 ha. My pawns are faster than his thinking speed. After the center exchanges and rook b1 I got the opportunity to push my pawn to g6, it's a mind-blowing square for me. Some of you may think of capturing the pawn. Let me show you the variation, or, some of you feeling bored. Then let me share a joke with you first. To the guy who invented zero, thanks for nothing. Ha 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 ha. So after you capture the pawn on g6, I got the open h file for my rook to access, play rook h1 check, after the king slides take the bishop, some of you may see that my queen is under attack, or I blundered that queen. Come and take, then you will understand whether I blundered the queen or sacrificed the queen. If you accept my queen sacrifice, then I will capture yours, and even if you play any other move, expect the best one. I can even sacrifice my rook on h8, this is a wonderful and brilliant sacrifice. The king has no moves available, which is why he has to capture the rook, and now, here comes the move, rook to f8, look, this becomes a wild checkmate. Do you want to checkmate your opponent like this? Comment me and give your love by liking this video. So going back to the position. Instead of capturing the pawn, which might lead into a sensitive position, he immediately counter-striked me with knight f6. Now what should you play in this position? Pause the video and think about this position a little bit, take a deep breath and raise your hand in the classroom. Stockfish is the teacher of classroom who played the insane move, h6, I sacrificed my queen right away. If you dare to even see my queen, I will capture your bishop with a check. King slides away and here comes the rook on h1, I am threatening checkmate in one, which is why you have free some space for the king by playing f takes g6. And after the moves like rook check, king ups, rook takes queen. I am going to promote my queen and it will be a checkmate in just 11 moves, or if you can't checkmate black, then don't worry, you promoted your pawn into a new queen. Life is going to be very delighted and black will lose his consciousness gradually. So back to the position, Seer here decided to capture the pawn, and I captured the bishop, king to g8, and we have rook to h1, the same tactical motif is arriving again, which is why knight takes queen will lead into the same variation which I described a moment ago. You know, life is very colorful when your love is with you. So in this position, he didn't play the hilarious move king to g8, he captured the pawn with his brave rook because the rook have 6 packs in his chest. Here comes the rook h1 check to thundering your king's position, blocking the check with the knight umbrella seems impoverished because after I capture the knight with my rook. Queen takes rook leads into a checkmate. Going back, if you block the check with knight h7, I can comfortably take away your rook, and queen h4 builds a strong threat on the knight. So after you play queen g8 in order to protect the knight, I can check you with my sweetie. The king hides in a dustbin and here comes the rook. Look at this insane rook move, it completely shutters down your position. This horrible box of death will obliterate all your consciousness in just matter of few seconds. Alright, did you get it what I'm trying say? And if you with me till now, then you are a true Stockfish subscriber. I wish you will be Grandmaster in the future. So back to the position, after I played rook h1, he didn't block the check with his stupid knight, as I can take your rook on g7, so he endeavored with rook h7, we have queen g5, attacking to the knight, and if you dare to play any other move expect the best one. Then after queen check king g8, queen g7 will lead into a checkmate, game will be over. So back to the position, he didn't capture the rook, instead he played queen f8, which is why I get the possibility of playing knight h6. Striking the knight by creating discover attack to the knight. This knight is also protected. We have king g7 and I urge you to pause the video here and try to figure out the best move for me. Pause the video, fool, why don't you pausing? Okay, in this position, if you find queen takes g6, then congratulations, you are great man like Magnus Carlsen, because after you capture the queen, we have rook g3 check. The king has no square to go, which is why he have to block the check with the knight. Now let me take the knight, and after your king moves away, we follow up with the incarnation bishop check, king g7, bishop to e7, creating a discover check to the king and the queen. King moves back and I won your queen. Now look at this position. Rook g8 is coming, which will be a checkmate. And even if you capture this, rook takes h6 will lead into a decisive checkmate. There is no way to hold on the game, believe me or not. By the way, after a couple of moves later, we have a fancy looking position. I have 3 major pieces in the kingside, and now, knight f7 becomes a checkmate. Wow, what a wonderful game. It's amazing, fantastic, amazing, excellent, fabulous, spectacular, terrific, splendid, superb, and marvelous. I really enjoyed the game while I played the game in my recent Rating Brawl tournament. And if you enjoyed the video, then don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Wish you all the best. Thanks for watching. Bye bye, see ya.